Hello. As we go a little bit further into our personal finance section of this course, today we're going to look at home ownership costs, and there are formulas that are actually very similar to the ones we saw last time, and we'll want to have a calculator handy as we go through these things. So getting started, just some vocabulary that goes right along with mortgages. When you have a down payment, then you are looking at the amount that you are going to put down on a house to lessen how much you have to finance. And the mortgage is actually the long-term installation loan, and it's used for the purpose of buying a home or property, and that home or property is then the security for the payment. If you didn't make your mortgage payments, then there is a process involved, but they could eventually repossess that property or home. And it's normally 15 years, 20 years. It's possible that in some cases installment loans could be, for mortgages, could even be much longer than that, but a typical one is 15 years or 30 years. Now, a fixed rate mortgage is going to have the same monthly principal and interest during the entire lifetime of the loan, whereas an adjustable rate mortgage is going to have payments, and they're going to change time to time depending on the changes in the interest rate. So if you were to buy a home when there is a fairly low mortgage rate, then you would definitely want to try to get that fixed rate mortgage rate. But if you were to purchase a home and set up a mortgage when interest rates were really, really high, then you might try to seek a variable rate mortgage in the hopes that the interest rates would go down and therefore your payment would go down. So that variable rate mortgage, adjustable rate mortgage, that's the same thing. It's just two different ways for that. Now, when you purchase a home, you might pay points at closing. Points, essentially, it's just the terminology that's used for you pay an extra 1% of whatever the loan amount is. Not your down payment, not what the house costs, but what actual loan amount is. And you would pay a fee of 1% of that, and that is considered 1 point. The reason that you might pay that is that the payment of points might let you get a lower interest rate. On the other hand, if you don't pay points, you'd have a higher interest rate perhaps. So that's just something that they just don't talk about it being a percentage, but that's what it is. It's a fee to get a lower rate, really. And 1 point is 1% of your loan amount. Then escrow is a fee where you pay a certain amount into a fund. You generally make that escrow payment right along with your mortgage payment, and then periodically your mortgage company will make a payment in your behalf. That escrow fund is generally used for home insurance and taxes, because since this property is in their interest, they want to make sure that that home insurance and taxes are paid. And so they just ask you to go ahead and send them a portion of the money each month, and then once a year they make that payment. They're not making money on that escrow account. It's just so that they can make sure that those payments get made. Now, they do adjust the escrow amount slightly if your taxes go up, or your taxes, they're not going to go down. But if they were to go down, they would adjust that some. Your amortization schedule, and we're going to look more closely at that, is something that is given to you, and you can look closely at it provided. And even though you pay the same amount each month, it separates that so that you can see how much of that payment is going to pay interest, how much of it is paying down your mortgage, and how much you still owe on your home. So those are just awesome words that we will use as we go through these next several slides. So this is a formula, and you can see, again, it's similar. It's got that rate and number, it's got time. But when you want to calculate how much the payment is going to be for a fixed installment loan, that's the formula. The payment is equal to the principal times the rate divided by the number of times you're going to pay each year, which is typically going to be 12 then. And then down at the bottom, again, the only other thing is we have T, and that's how many years that are involved in that. So I'm just going to have a little clip here of that formula again so that we still have that in front of us. These formulas are not generally memorized. We just kind of refer to them. So the price of a home loan is here. We've got all of our information within this, and what we want to do is answer the questions, and this is very similar to what you would expect in your homework problems. Our P is going to be our principal amount, but P is going to be the price minus the down payment, how much we actually finance. So the bank requires a 10% down payment. Our very first question says find the required down payment. So you're going to do 10% of the price. And 10% of that price then is $19,500. Okay, so the amount of the mortgage we have to calculate, but you can't do that until you get the P calculated. So what we have to do is over here take our $195,000 minus that 10% to find out what P is. And I'm just going to bring up our calculator pretty quickly so that we can do that calculation. $195,000 minus $19,500. And so we're actually going to be financing within this example $175,500. So that is P. P, $175,500. R is our interest rate as a decimal. It says 7.5% within that problem. So I'm going to move that decimal over 2 places. So it'll be 0.075. And then T is the number of years. So it says it's a 30-year mortgage. And N is the number of payments per year, and we would expect that to be 12. And again, if you forget what those letters stand for, that is here on this previous slide. It's N times a year, T years. We're going to take these things and answer all the rest of our questions. So find out the amount of the mortgage. The amount of the mortgage is that P. So we've already said we are financing $175,500. If we are going to pay for 2 points at the time of closing, which just happens to be what this bank is requiring there, that does not lessen our amount. That is a fee we're paying, and that fee is doing something to our interest rate. And it is 2% of the amount financed, because 2 points, 1 point's 1%, so 0.02 times 175,500. So we'll bring our calculator back up, take that 175,500 that's already in there and multiply it times 0.02. And we find out that that's a $3,510 fee. $3,510 for the 2 points paid at closing. Now, how much is the payment? And this is the payment for the home. It does not include any extra fees that would be added to the payment for taxes and insurance. This is where we're going to use these numbers that I've written down here in the lower right, and we're going to use that formula. So as I bring up the calculator, I'll try to get it in a position where we can see both the formula and our numbers. So now I can see my numbers, my calculator, and my formula. Applying that formula, if I want to find out how much the payment is, first of all, I see that it's a fraction. If you have a calculator, a TI-84 Plus, then you should be able to hit alpha, y equals, enter, and that's going to be a fraction set up. Then the amount my finance is $175,500. Open parentheses, my interest rate. Okay, so right here I need another fraction, alpha, y equals, enter. There's nothing on your calculator that tells you that. It's just a little trick that TI put in an update. So now my numerator, I have 0.075. And then divided by 12, because I'm going to make 12 payments a year. In the denominator, we treat brackets just like parentheses. So 1 minus, and then another parentheses, 1 plus, fraction, and then I have again my 0.075. I didn't put my leading zero on it, but it's actually the same thing, of course. So 0.075 over 12. Behind that fraction, close parentheses, raised to the negative. Now, on your calculator, make sure you use this one, and it's down here in parentheses for negative. If you use the minus, minus is used in between terms, but when you are doing a lead, it has to be the negative down here on a calculator. So negative n times t, so that is going to be 12, and then times 30. Get behind this entire thing, and are you ready to find out what the payments are going to be? Bam! So to the nearest penny, that's going to be $1,227.12. $1,227.12. $1,227.12. Now the last part, find the total interest paid over the 30 years. What's going to happen there is you have to do your total payments minus the loan amount. So what we know is that I'm going to pay $1,227.12 times, I'm just going to put them in parentheses here, times 12 payments a year times 30 years minus $175,500 loan. $1,227.12. And as far as that putting in parentheses, it would have been fine to put that in parentheses, but I could also just hit the times key. So times 12 times 30. You might be interested to go ahead and find out how much you're going to pay them over 30 years, minus your loan amount. Now you could type that in, how much you were going to pay them, but I just hit minus and it automatically does the answer. So that's minus $175,500. For loaning me this money over the course of the next 30 years, they'll make $266,263.20. And that is my interest paid over the 30 years. So that's one of our things that we want to do with a loan thing, is just help you understand where they're calculating up the payments, how much this is going to cost you, what's going on, and really what points are for. Now, when they do the amortization calculation, payments are due at the exact same time, but they're also the exact same amount. You keep paying the same amount all the time on a fixed rate mortgage. But every payment you make, the interest portion goes down a little bit, and the part that goes towards your unpaid principal increases. So we're going to look on the next slide at how to do an amortization calculation and understand that. Now interest, when we calculate the interest, we'll just use this simple formula where we do the principal times the rate. We will do it with the T, but we're doing this one at a time, and so it's going to be the same. That's not going to vary. Principal, though, is the balance of the loan, and that's going to change every single time we make a payment. So it's going to decrease every month. The interest rate is the annual interest rate of the loan, and then time is going to be 1/12, because we're looking at 1 year, but then we're making 12 payments during that year. Just remember that T is 1/12. That's an automatic. So here's some information given to us, and we are going to calculate just the very beginning of an amortization sheet, because this thing would actually be very long, because there's 12 payments every year for 15 years. First of all, when we calculate interest, to put in our very first spot here, what we need to do is say our interest payment is always going to be I equals PR 1/12. And again, that's because the T, as we saw on the previous slide, is 1/12. Now, P is your outstanding balance. So here we've got $130,000 to start with. The P is going to change every single time. So bringing up our calculator again, if I want to get that very first interest payment, I take my outstanding balance of $130,000, and then I need to multiply that, that's my P, times R, which was 8%, okay, times 1/12. Now I could just use parentheses and put 1/12 in the parentheses, that'd be fine. Or 1 divided by 12 in parentheses. Okay, but this is the PRT as you go across there. So I'm going to hit enter, and what I see is that this interest is approximately $866.67. $866.67. But here's the thing, I'm only making $1242.35 payment each time. So what I've got to do is take that $1242.35 minus the amount that I have just calculated is going to go towards interest. And that gives me, I am paying on my principal $375.68. $375.68. So now my balance of the loan will be my previous balance minus my principal payment. So I previously owed $130,000, but now I am decreasing that by $375.68. So now I have a new outstanding balance of $129.64.32. $129.64.32. Okay, now as I go into my next row then, that is my new P, because that is my new outstanding balance. So I can take that $129.64.624. I did write that down right, didn't I? No. $129.624. I left 2 off. We're just going to see if I can fit it in there. $129.624.32. We have to take the $129.624.32 and once again, just like I did on this very first row of the calculator, I need to calculate my new interest. So that'll be times my rate times 1/12. And this time I'm just going to do 1 divided by 12. As I said, it's the same thing, makes no difference. I just put that 1 divided by 12 in parentheses, so that's one fraction together. So this is going to be my new interest payment, $864.16. Ever so slightly lower than it was before. If I'm paying $864.16 for interest, then I need to take my payment, $1242.35, and subtract that $864.16, and my payment minus my interest part of it will tell me how much is going to principal. So $378.19. And that's my new principal payment. Of course, now I need a new balance because now I've paid down my balance. So I've got to take this $962.4.32 minus my new principal payment, $378.19. And now my new outstanding balance is $129,246.13. $129,246.13. I don't know why I can't ever remember all those numbers at once, but what number is it I need to insert? 246. At least I left room for it this time. Okay. And again, if you were doing a complete amortization schedule, it would just go on and on and on. Most of these are generated then by computer or Excel, where you can program in different things that you need the columns to do, and it makes the calculations much faster now. But that's an amortization schedule. Shifting just a little bit, can you afford the house? Most financial advisors tell us that only 28% of your gross monthly income should go to your mortgage payment, and no more than 36% for your total monthly debt. So suppose that you were a banker trying to figure out, could someone afford this house? Or even you as an individual thinking, am I going to get approved for this home? This is kind of the calculation that goes through. If a family's gross annual income is $63,600, we're going to determine, can this family afford an $170,000 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 4%? Now, one of the things that is a little bit off on here is we're not looking at their total debt. We're only looking at their mortgage amount. So typically they're going to also ask you for all of your total debt and helping with this calculation. But what we've got to do is, what is their minimum payment? If we're only supposed to pay 28% of the gross monthly income, then that means we take their gross monthly income, $63,600, and we multiply it by 28%. We're probably going to have to round this off to the nearest penny, so I've put an about there. 63,600, and then we're going to multiply that by 28%. If that's the gross annual, what that tells me is that they can spend $17,808 per year. $17,808, but that's still a year. So if I want to get that to monthly, I need to divide that by 12. So divided by 12 equals $1,484 a month. $1,484. Now, about that divide by 12 part, it would have been okay to take, I could have done that in a different order, so just kind of bringing this up. I could have, in fact, taken their annual $63,600 and then divided that by 12 to find out what their monthly gross is, and then take 28% of the monthly gross, but you see I get the same answer. So there's really two things that have to happen. The order on these two is not important. Somewhere we had to divide by 12 to get it monthly, and we had to multiply by 28. It won't matter what the order is on that one. It asks us to calculate this particular payment. So now we've calculated what they can afford. So now we're going to look at the house they're wanting to buy and see how much would this particular house be. It doesn't say anything about a down payment here, so we're going to assume that they are financing the entire thing. So that's going to be P, and then the interest rate for the mortgage is 4%. And we've got 30 years, so that's our time. And of course, we know that they're making 12 payments each. So we're going to see if we can remember 170,000 and 4%. I need to take a fraction, alpha y equals enter. Then at the top of that, I need the 170,000 parentheses, fraction. My rate this time was 4% over 12 payments a year. Okay, now this is over parentheses 1 minus parentheses 1 plus. Okay, If you get this on your calculator, what this probably means is I hit a minus instead of a negative. But a lot of times students, when they get this, they just kind of, oh no, and they quit. If you hit go to, it's going to tell you where you've messed up or where it quits understanding what you were trying to do. So I'm going to choose number 2 here. And that's exactly it. It's blinking on what looks to me like a negative. But I mentioned this last time. When it's the lead, you have to make sure you use this key down here in parentheses. And you can see now it's a slightly shorter. And that's the difference in the way they look. Okay, so now I just hit enter again, and now it's done that. So this payment would end up being $811.61. $811.61. The next thing says compare and conclude. Can they afford this home? I'm going to say yes. I'm very glad to see that it's really not close to their limit, because in all honesty, by the time they put their home insurance and their taxes into this, that's going to raise this a couple $100. So if it gets too close, then you have to think, well, I don't, but right now they didn't give us that information. So yes, they can afford this home. Good news for them. We can loan it to them, or you can buy it, whichever it is.